look at the signs and just heed the voice of the Spirit, I think that as leaders we can know whether it's time to stay or to go.
This podcast is brought to you by Blackaby Ministries International. To find out more, visit blackaby.org.
Well, welcome to the Richard Blackaby Leadership Podcast. My name is Sam Camp, and I am your host. And here to help take our leadership to the next level, we have Dr. Richard Blackaby.
Well, I'll do what I can, Sam.
Well,
Can't make
you're
any
in the
promises.
hot seat now. I'm not going to do it, so one of us needs to step up to the plate here, Richard. And we recently talked about Duncan Campbell and just seeing that indeed revival is possible through ordinary people. But today we want to look at, something maybe a little more focused on leadership. And that is, in essence, a question of timing, but also when you come to a new place, when you have a new assignment, a new leadership post, knowing when to leave that post and knowing when is your assignment finished.
Yeah.
I think you've taken on a number of assignments and you get the job done, and do you stay on and just ride off into the sunset, or should you you've known people that have left too early maybe, and said, no, the going is too tough, maybe I made a mistake, or maybe this is not for me. So sort of discerning when to go and when to stay in a new assignment.
And of course, as we've seen before, so much of the key to leadership success is all about timing.
Yeah.
You might have two different people that have similar skills, but one has their timing off, and they perhaps leave too soon. They were right at a tipping point. They were right where things were going to really start falling into place, but then they left, discouraged. And then others that have done some good things and had some accomplishments, but then they didn't really read the signs when it was time to move on to the next assignment. They just stayed where they were. They just got quite comfortable and just squandered some years that just basically undid all the good that they had done. Had they just left earlier, they would have left as a hero. Instead, now people are resenting them and trying to figure out a way to ease them out of there. One of the things that I've done is I've traveled a lot, and so I'll meet pastors or I'll meet business people, and I love hearing their stories of how God has used them to turn a company around that perhaps was failing and unprofitable and couldn't hold on to good employees and had maybe a rundown facility, but they stayed long enough to build a brand new facility, to overhaul the staff, to build a great reputation, and now it's just one of the premier businesses in the whole community. But you realize, but they put 15 years into that place. It wasn't overnight.
Yeah.
Or you see, I just recently was talking with a pastor that had come to a church. It was in the middle of a very contentious time and a lot of bitter division, and which is not the best time to come to a new church. But this pastor had been there for more than a dozen years now, and had worked through, paid down a lot of the indebtedness the church had, and they lost a number of people early on that could have been very discouraging. He faced a lot of criticism, a lot of which was really not his fault. It was the fault of predecessors who had started a lot of those commitments and made the decisions that have been so controversial. But he weathered that storm. And sometimes, just like weathering a storm, you just kind of have to hunker down and just get to the other side. And it's interesting, there was a time several years ago where the average stay of a pastor in America was about 18 months. And you just think how. I think the last I heard, the average stay now is up to about 3 years. But even 3 years, that's not much. There's a kind of a rule of thumb with churches that says that it takes about 5 years for the church to become yours. Under 5 years, and a lot of what's happening is the result of the people before you. But after 5 years, now it's starting to become your church. And so if even today the average stay is 3 years or less, then that means that most pastors never stay long enough for the church to actually belong to them, to reflect them, that they haven't stayed long enough to implement the kind of changes that will last. And so I've thought, just in light of just seeing, again, just an example of how powerful it can be when a leader plants their life somewhere and says, boy, it's tough, and I've got people leaving the church mad at me, and it's over things I didn't even do. How do you weather those storms and just stay there? And I think especially for pastors, but I think Christians perhaps in general, it can often be easy to blame God when, if you don't want to, if you're not having any fun and you want to leave, it's easy to just say, I feel God is moving me on. I feel a door opened. It might be that you've been knocking on every door and applying to every vacancy. And then when
you're giving your resume to everyone who looks at you.
And then when someone finally bites, it's like, well, I sense God moving me on now. And it might not be God at all.
But that temptation must be strong, especially for pastors, if they inherit something that's, more than they bargained for, and I mean, I certainly sympathize with those folks in those positions, because that's not easy.
Yeah, and of course, if you come to a place and then it just seemed like everything's going wrong, and you're uncovering all kinds of skeletons in the closets, and people are upset with you, and it's not what you thought it would be. It's easy to just say, you know what, I think I may have made a mistake. It doesn't seem like it's a good fit. Maybe I just need to cut my losses and find a place that'll be a better fit for me. And so sometimes it can be very easy to not stay very long, and especially if you're kind of hit with a storm right off the bat, to say, well, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah.
But I've walked with a lot of leaders like that to say, well, but did you pray about this? Did you have others praying for you? Did you sense at the time that God was leading you to this place? If so, you may not have known all the problems that were waiting for you there, but God knew, and yet God called you there anyway. So just because now things are hard doesn't mean that you made a mistake or that you misunderstood God's leading. It may well be that God intends for you to clean up that mess, and he led you to a very difficult assignment. But if you'll trust him and follow his lead, he'll help you to have victory there. And so,
well, and I think you said at a conference recently that the whatever crisis you're facing that doesn't cancel out the calling that God has placed on your life. And I think that maybe needs to be the anchor to get you through those storms.
And so there's two kind of main questions. One is just, how can you tell when maybe it is time to leave? Maybe you've just been there long enough. I had someone tell me years ago that they felt, just as a general rule, of course not hard and fast for everybody, but his general rule was, after a leader had been somewhere for 10 years, that after 10 years, you've basically been able to make the most of the significant contribution you're going to make to your organization. It doesn't mean that you can't keep on leading, but whatever fresh ideas you had, whatever innovative approaches that you might have initiated, a decade you've done a lot of that, and so at that point, you can almost tell sometimes for some leaders after about a decade, they've become kind of managers. They're managing what they have created, but they're not necessarily leading in a sense of taking the organization into uncharted territory. And now you can, but probably about every decade, if you're going to stay somewhere, you're going to have to reinvent yourself. You're going to have to lead at a higher level, in a different way. Maybe now, a decade later, you've got more staff to manage than you had when you got there. Maybe you got a bigger facility, you got more products to manage, and so on. But after 10 years, if you just keep leading the way you always have, you're probably going to start running on empty. And so what are some of the signs that perhaps you've been there long enough and you need to seriously consider moving on? And I would say one is just that you don't have a vision for the future anymore. And I've talked to lots of leaders that whenever you talk to them, they were all excited about, we're going to start a second service and we're going to start a second campus over here. And we're going to start this new line of products and we're going to get this new marketing approach. But they always had ideas, and there's always some new things that they're experimenting. I'm really excited about this new technology. I think it's going to really cut down on the cost of production and so on, and increase profits. And we're going to enter into the European market, and we're really excited about the possibilities, or going online and sales and so on. But whenever you talk to them, they're excited about something new that they're working on.
Well, they're looking to the future. Yeah.
And they're excited about going into the future and experiencing those things. But when you lose that sense of a vision for the future, where you just can't see anything. We've touched on this before, but it may well mean that God is not giving you a vision for the future, because God knows you won't be there in the future, and so you don't need a vision for a place you're not going to be. And along with that, it's just that there's no fresh new ideas. And I've seen pastors like this, when they first arrived, they wanted to change all the color schemes. They want to redo the platform and the auditorium. They wanted to hire a new staff and start a new ministry. But after a while, it's just, there's nothing fresh. It's just rolling over a new calendar year. They're just doing all the same programs that they've done for a while now. And you can just, and same with sermons. It's used to be they were coming up with creative new kind of sermon series and finding some interesting props, maybe decorating the whole stage to kind of support the sermon theme at the time. And now it's just the same things that they've done for a while. And I think everybody kind of can tell at a certain point, we're just rehashing stuff. We're just recycling the same kinds of ideas and efforts that have been done many times before. And that becomes, again, I mean, there's ways to address that, but it might also just be a sign, I've just lost the creativity for this. I just can't think of anything new. All I know to do is just what we've always done. And of course, all these are kind of interrelated, but a third one would just be a loss of passion. You're going through the motions. I guess when I'm being more harsh, I just call pastors like this just religious bureaucrats. They're going through the motions. Yeah. They're putting in time. They know that they've got just 5 more years till they can retire, and so we're just kind of hunkering down to kind of kill off 5 more years of my life so I can then maybe do something that I am passionate about. And I always just love leaders that are passionate, whether business, the pastors, whatever they are. But when you talk to them, they just their voice there's passion in their voice. They're excited about what's happening, and certainly a loss of passion. You need to address that. You either need God to get your passion back, or you need to start to wonder, why am I no longer passionate about this place? Because I just feel like leaders need to be passionate about what they're doing. It's just a part of their equipment as a leader. Is you got to have passion if people are going to follow you. And a fourth thing would just be declining results. It used to be that you were reaching a lot of people in your community as you were pastoring a church, or you were making lots of sales of products. You were getting lots of attendance out at your events. But in recent days, the numbers just aren't there anymore. And again, you always hear, well, it's not about the numbers, but numbers can be revealing. It used to be that it's like a touring rock band that used to fill out the stadiums, and now it can't fill out ordinary bar with some. There's just, the numbers aren't there anymore. And of course, there's lots of ways to interpret that. Maybe I need to, do a better job. Maybe I need to up my game. Or maybe it's just I've led this organization as far as I can, and now people are moving on, and this place really needs a different leader. And I do see sometimes kind of aging pastors that the church is literally dying around them. The church used to have 300 people, and now it's down to 20. And the pastor still is just kind of doesn't move on, doesn't for whatever reason just feels like, well, I can't leave now. The church needs me, and it's like, well, the reason the church is dying is because you've stayed too long. You need to step aside and let a younger, more passionate leader take over. And then just a fifth sign is just low morale. A lot of times your staff or your people, they used to really enjoy working with you. They used to really enjoy working in your organization. It was a cutting-edge place, perhaps, where they were growing and learning. But now they've lost their confidence. Maybe the numbers have been declining long enough. Profits are gone. And so people just aren't excited about continuing to work there. And oftentimes you can tell because you start losing good people. They start moving on to other jobs, other organizations, and it's like, why can't I hold on to good people anymore? Well, maybe because they just kind of realize, well, this is a dead-end place now for me. It's not. There's no future here. There's no passion here. And so why would I invest my life in a place where it's not being led well anymore? So those would be some signs to me that it may well be either time for a complete overhaul in how you're leading, or it just may be a sign I've made my contribution here. It's time to be looking for someplace else to serve. But then there's also some signs, I think, that are signs that you need to stay. That there's some evidence that would suggest to me this isn't a good time to leave. And I've had some job offers periodically, some job inquiries, and some looked quite interesting, attractive. But you have to always ask yourself, is this a time to leave where I am? It's not just about going somewhere else. It's, but do I have, is God still using me where I am? And are we in the middle of some efforts that God has helped me to launch that I need to stay until they're done? And I've known some people that they're just always kind of attracted to the glitter of something new.
Yeah. But
they're never staying long enough to really see lasting change take place where they are. So a few things, like just it could just be that there's instead of lessening momentum, it might be that there's growing momentum, and there's a growing excitement, and there seems to be a groundswell of increasing attendance or increasing sales, and maybe you put in 5 hard years there, and in those first 5 years, you weren't seeing a lot of results, but really in recent days, it's trending in the right direction, and it's not an all-out, huge bumper crop harvest happening yet, but you are seeing, upticks in all kinds of metrics, and you begin to realize, I think the signs would tell me that we are right on the verge of some major breakthroughs. It's all moving in the right direction, and I've always kind of felt like, and I watched some leaders that I think were very close to just a major breakthrough where they were. All the signs were indicating that it was trending that way, and then they left for something else, and the organization kind of sort of stalled out because suddenly they're in transition. They're going to get a new leader who's going to have to kind of build their own kind of momentum, and you just kind of feel like if that guy had just stayed 5 more years, that organization would have gone to a whole nother level. But they didn't stay long enough. And sometimes, another thing is you finally maybe just built a good team. You might have come to an organization and inherited a bunch of people on staff, and some of them just weren't a good fit for you. They didn't sync with your leadership, or they were just underperforming and didn't want to be held accountable. And it takes, unless you're just going to, and I don't really necessarily normally recommend this, but unless you just want a clean house and just start all over, what I found is over 5 years or so, you may gradually overhaul a lot of the staff. I always want to give people at least an opportunity to buy in and to rally around the new leader, but some people won't, or they can't, or they're misplaced, and so it takes some time to realize, okay, this person's a nice enough person, but they're just not getting the job done that we need. We're going to have to, unfortunately, let this person go or reassign them. But after a couple of years, you may well have built a really strong team, and now this team is ready to go. You got some stallions in place. You got some major horsepower available, and you're just molding them together into a team. Your people are kind of understanding the vision, the direction, the approach you want to take, and that's usually not a good time to leave. I mean, if you do have to leave, you want to leave them in good hands with a good team behind you. But at the same time, it takes a while to gel a team. If you watch even in sports, you might even have some really good high-priced players, but it takes a while to mold them into a team that can work together. And that's the same with staff sometimes. You build a staff, you build a core of volunteers, and then at a certain point, they get in sync, and they start to accomplish a lot more. And then just a third thing would just be that over time, you begin to remove obstacles. There could just be you might just be in a very bad location for your business, or maybe your facility is inadequate, it's too small, or it's just ugly, or maybe you just have some key staff people that are just divisive. They're pulling against the grain instead of with the grain, and for whatever else, it's taken a while, but you finally remove the people that are resisting, that are causing trouble, and now you basically removed a lot of the obstacles to growth, and so now you're set to grow. And I've seen people do this again in churches and in businesses. They were out there plowing the fields, and they were removing stumps from trees that have been cut down. They're doing all kinds of stuff to get ready for a great harvest, and then they leave. They finally have the stage set for some real success. They've got that facility totally overhauled. The church the business had a really bad reputation, but they've been there long enough now that people are giving them another chance, and they're realizing, hey, things aren't like they used to be, and you just realize, you face some real obstacles when you got there, but you've addressed a lot of those problems, and you've removed a lot of impediments, and now you're at a place. The next 5 years ought to be some of the best growth years you've ever had, but for whatever reason, sometimes people just feel like, I've got this job offer here, and I just may move on. And at least hopefully you've addressed a lot of problems, so the guy who follows you will have an easier assignment than you did. But there is a value in, and I've seen this with some churches. I was just in a great church recently that is very healthy, very strong, and it's been strong for a number of years, a number of decades. But when you look at the church, they've had a series of pastors who've all stayed a while, 20, 30 years. And they've been good people. They've chosen wisely. They've gotten good leaders, and then the leaders have stayed long enough to really build some things into the culture of the church, and to build a strong reputation, to build a strong staff, a strong culture that is God-honoring and wholesome and unified. And so it's just interesting to me sometimes you'll see maybe two churches or two similar businesses in a community. They might be in the same neighborhood, but one of the churches just chronically underperforms and struggles and loses people and seems to always be kind of lurching from one crisis to another. And then you see another church or business, and it's just perennially they do well. They've always got lots of customers. They've always got strong attendance, strong giving. And you just think, well, why is this organization just so healthy year in and year out? And this organization that is in the same market, it's producing the same kind of product, but they seem to be struggling all the time. And I feel like a lot of that is the length of the tenure of leaders. Did the leaders stay long enough to implement change, to stay long enough until the changes they made now were embedded in the culture? Mm-hmm. And even after they leave now, the culture is going to be set to do things in a better way than it used to. And so, for our listeners today, Sam, there may be some that I just think there's always some people wrestling with, is it time for me to go? Or maybe there's all kinds of signs that it is time to go, but you're not paying attention. You're thinking, well, if I left, I'm not sure I could make as much money somewhere else as I'm making here. We're not seeing a lot of results right now, but I've kind of lost my passion for doing this work, but at least it pays well. And I would say, for the sake of the organization, you've got to decide, are the signs saying, when I really honestly look at the signs right now around me, are they indicating that I need to just kind of stop looking all around for other possible jobs and just focus, hunker down, pay the price early on to make some changes, address some problems, and stay here until things really begin to get the momentum that I think this organization should have? Or is it that as I really look at the signs, it becomes obvious I've made the significant contributions. I don't think I've got anything else in the tank here to pull out, and so maybe it's just time to. I've done what I can. I need to graciously step aside and let another leader come in who can take it to the next level. As we know about leadership, it's not about us. Leaders come and go. It's about the organization. Have I done all that I can to make this organization as good as I can make it? And if so, then I need to just step aside so another leader with other skills, abilities, gifts can come in and then take it to the next level that I couldn't. So either way, sometimes we're staying not long enough. Other times we're staying too long. God knows what that magic number is. And I think if we take some time to look at the results, look at the signs, and just heed the voice of the Spirit, I think that as leaders we can know whether it's time to stay or to go.
Well, this has always been very practical advice, and I would encourage our listeners, if you have any follow-up to this, or if you find yourself in either of these situations, reach out to us, let us know, and if there's more questions we can answer, send us a line, podcast@blackaby.org, and until next
otherwise,
time.
I guess it's time for us to go.
I think so.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is something you enjoyed, it really makes a difference if you leave a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. We always love hearing from our listeners, so email us at podcast@blackaby.org.